Playoffs. That's right, folks. DFS Wildcard Weekend is upon us. The NFL playoffs are set to kick off on Saturday and then Sunday, of course, and of course the big Monday night game with Brady and the boys playing the Dallas Football Cowboys. We got all of it for you right now. I'm your host, Guasco, with my man Derek. We're going to break down some DraftKings, some FanDuel, some DFS for Super Wildcard Weekend right here on the Razzball Fantasy Football Channel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Razzball Fantasy Football YouTube channel. I have been off for a handful of days, actually, missing the Sunday live show, man. It was kind of a bummer not to have the Sunday live show with us last week, as it was week 18. Hopefully you were not playing in the playoffs last week, but if you were, I hope you brought home that hashtag Razzball title. Derek, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. You and I haven't done too many duo episodes. We've, of course, done plenty of Sunday mornings together, but we haven't been able to team up for many duo episodes. However, for the remainder of the playoffs, we'll be teaming up to do some DFS talk. And we don't talk a lot, you and I don't talk a lot of DFS on this program during the season. However, now that the season-long fantasy is behind us, we now turn the page to the next fold, which is DFS, which is just one way to stay involved with fantasy football through the playoffs. So Derek and I have some FanDuel lineups and DraftKings lineups that we're going to suggest to you for the Saturday, Sunday slate. And then Derek actually has a full group slate for all the players involved. And once that Monday slate drops, we will get that for you available on the channel as well. Without any further ado, of course, we want to make sure you're following Razzball anywhere that you can find us on Twitter at Razzball. That's RAZZBALL. You can subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy Football YouTube channel right here. Hit that bell, subscribe, leave a comment on your favorite values and maybe your must plays this week in DFS. Let's see if we miss anybody along the way here. And of course, for those of you on the go, make sure to download, subscribe to, and leave a rate and review for our podcast, which will be the audio version of this show here. So the Razzball Fantasy Football podcast is available anywhere you listen to your podcast as well. Once again, I'm your host, Sky Guasco. You can find me on Twitter at Sky Guasco, SKYGUASCO, and I'm joined by my man Derek at Derek_FAVRET. Derek, very nice to have you, man. How are you feeling?
Thanks, Sky. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's kind of nice, like you said. You and I here, the kind of the two intellectuals of that Sunday morning show. Get that noise.
The scholar athletes, if you will.
That's right. You know, all that noise and the jabbering between Bobby and Matt. We push that aside. You know, that's regular season talk. Now we're in the playoffs.
We're just here to get stuff done. That's all.
That's right.
We just want to make sure things are getting done on the channel for.
We're here to share knowledge. That's right.
I love it. Absolutely. Well, let's jump right into it, man. All right.
Sounds good.
I'll let you kick it off here. So, like I said, we're gonna dive in here. You're covering DraftKings. I'm gonna cover FanDuel, right? And let's just start with that Saturday slate. And for anybody that's, maybe taking a week off, maybe you didn't play week 18 at all, took a weekend off, you're getting back into fantasy football, you're getting back into NFL, maybe you just aren't sure of the seedings. Let me kind of run down what the NFL playoffs look like in the extra day of the Super Wildcard Weekend now that we have here. Of course, the rules changed a couple years ago. We have the single bye this year. So the Philadelphia Eagles on the NFC side, the Kansas City Chiefs on the AFC side. So we have the number 7 7th seed Seattle Seahawks heading to the San Francisco 49ers at the 2 seed on Saturday afternoon. And then in the evening slate, we have the Chargers in the 5 seed facing the Jacksonville Jaguars in the 4 seed. And all of these quarterbacks making their playoff debuts as starters, which is going to be a lot of fun. So let's start on Saturday, Derek. We'll start with DraftKings. Give me your ideal lineup. Give me the player, the position, and the price point. And then let's maybe there's somebody you left off of your roster, but if you made a swap or two, depending on developments over the next couple of days, you might fold somebody in. So DraftKings specifically, why don't you go ahead and take it away for the Saturday slate?
Yeah, no, sounds good. Yeah. So I've got an interesting lineup here for Saturday with these 4 teams, because there's just stock full of great DFS plays. But I started my lineup building it with the 2 running backs, and to me, I have to have Eckler and Etienne in my lineups. Both of those guys are just prime. I mean, that's going to be a great. I'm hoping it's the best game of the weekend. Frankly, it's kind of appearing that way, most competitive and probably a lot of fun. And I just need to get both of those running backs, Eckler and Etienne. So I started my Saturday build around those two. Eckler's is expensive, 8,100. ETM's a little more manageable at 6,000. So I started my build there, and then I went through and added some names to make it work. I'm going to skip quarterback for a minute because I kind of like all four of them, frankly. But I'll come back to why I chose the one that I did. But so I've got Eckler 8,100, ETN 6,000. I moved on to wide receivers, and Keenan Allen to me is a must play. He's at 7,000 on DK, which I can afford that with some work and some of the other positions a little bit cheaper, so I can afford Keenan Allen. If he's healthy, he's out there. He's a monster. I hope Mike Williams plays because that'll loosen things up a little bit for Allen. But yeah, I have to have Keenan Allen in my lineup. So again, I've got him in there for 7,000. And for tight end, I was flipping a coin between Engram and Kittle. Both of those guys really should go off. So, I did the next best thing. I have Kittle at tight end, and I've got Engram in my flex. I think, like I said, compared to some of the wide receivers that we're seeing at Ingram's price point at 4,200, I think he's as good, if not better, than what we're looking at there. So I've got Kittle at 5,900, Engram at 4,200. Defense, I've got the Jaguars. There's an old saying: teams that fly cross country to play a game, tend to be a little bit sluggish. Jacksonville, they haven't had a home playoff game, and who knows when. It's been in such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of excitement there. I could see perhaps. I don't think that's going to be a low-scoring game per se, but I think they might be able to, with that excitement there, they could do some things on the defense. So I have Jaguars, and frankly, the other part of that, because they're only 2,700 on DK, so I needed, with some of those other big names, I needed a little salary relief. So I have the Jaguars as my defense. Going back to wide receivers, again, I need a little salary relief. So Marvin Jones Jr. for the Jaguars is my second wide receiver. I do like Christian Kirk, but I really, unfortunately for him, I think that he might be shadowed by Sonny Samuel most of the game. So that would really open it up for either Zay Jones or Marvin Jones Jr. So again, for the price point, I like Marvin Jones Jr. there. And then I've got to get a piece of of Samuel. He's coming back. He's healthy. He's going to be Debo. He's going to be part of the run package. He's going to be a wide receiver. He's coming back. There's so many options there for Brock Purdy with Kittle and Samuel and Aiyuk and CMC but I really think they're going to work Samuel in. So, and his price point actually is just slightly under Aiyuk at 5,700. So I like the upside of Samuel for a little bit cheaper than Aiyuk. So that only leaves me at quarterback, and so I'm going with Justin Herbert. I think I really like Purdy. Gino playing well. Of course, Sunshine, hosted his first game. I like him too, but I really want someone who's been tested at this level. And the Chargers play teams like the Chiefs, twice a year, and that's as tough of a test going into Kansas City as a playoff game in Jacksonville. So I think, and I have the salary left, so. I'm going Justin Herbert there as my quarterback. So just to reiterate, kind of go through real quick. I have Herbert at 6,600, Eckler at 8,100, ETN 6,000, Marvin Jones Jr. 3,400, Deebo Samuel at 5,700, Keenan Allen 7,000, Kittle 5,900, Engram 4,200, and then the Jaguars defense at 2,700. So that's my Saturday slate.
I love it. A couple things I've noticed about your roster construction, which I think I want to pinpoint really quick before I give my roster here, because I think I build rosters the same way you do. And I'm saying this, I can tell you build a roster at receiver specifically and maybe flex. I can tell you build it a certain way because of who you read off in order. Mm-hmm. So I can tell that you went for your top dogs at running back. Smart. I did similar, a little bit different, which I'll get to. And then you're looking for that big dog quarterback, of course. And then you're kind of like, which DST makes sense, but's the cheapest, but a good upside play so we can play. And then how can I work those wide receivers? Of course, you're going to want at least one or two top dogs, obviously. But I think the strategy here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're scrolling down a little bit and you're saying, in that like tier 3, tier 4 group of DFS options at wide receiver this week, Marvin Jones for you is a guy that could have upswing because maybe Kirk is shadowed, what have you, as you explained. But then you start kind of like, okay, how much do I have left? All right, now I get maybe another middle tier guy. Oh, actually, I can afford Deebo. Oh, and I can get Keenan Allen, who is that number one horse. So I like how you do that versus go pick a top dog and then just go like, I'll just get this scrappy receiver instead. You're actually going the opposite way. Am I correct on that? Can you kind of expand on your thought process on that?
Yeah, no, you really you filled it in similar to the way I did. So I definitely like to have at least one stud either at running back and wide receiver for sure. In this case, I had two stud running backs the way they are. So I knew I needed some salary relief somewhere else, but when I saw the wide receiver slate, I have to have Keenan Allen in this lineup. I just have to, and so I balanced that with Marvin Jones Jr. and just like you said, and then I'll jump to defense. I'll get my defense and kind of plug that in and know where my salary is and plug the tight ends in. And I went back to the wide receivers, like you said, and I realized, well, I can have, I like Aiyuk, but I got Samuel right there, $100 cheaper. That's a great, the upside, the potential upside there is fantastic. So you really hit it on the head, how I kind of put that together. So.
Awesome. And I like that. I mean, there's no right or wrong way per se to build a lineup. I could tell the way that you read that off, that you were building it that way, which is similar that I do. And we hadn't talked about that before the program. So I thought that was an interesting approach. All right. So that is the DraftKings version of Saturday from Derek there. And I'll kind of break down now the FanDuel version of it. We're just trying to diversify for y'all out there. So I have, I highlighted 4 players, Derek, that I have on my roster as well, that you also have. Now, of course, we didn't share our rosters intentionally before this to have the live reaction, but I do have 4 players in my lineup that you also have in your lineup. Of course, anybody that's new to DFS or maybe don't play during the season, but you play in the playoffs, DraftKings and FanDuel have different price points, but relatively speaking, it's the same value, if you will. But you're going to hear like Derek will put out a price point for Keenan Allen. I also have Keenan Allen in my lineup, but on FanDuel, he's far more expensive, quote unquote, because the numbers are higher. But it's not necessarily meaning that he's more expensive to have, if that makes sense. So I want to kind of clear that up for anybody that's new to DFS. So I will just start up at the top. I'm not going to bury my lead because he's my dog, and I've had faith in him all season, and I know he's been, quote unquote, disappointing for fantasy football because I had him as QB1 coming into the season, and he hasn't blown the doors off, but he hasn't had a healthy roster all season. But I think my boy Jay Herbs does do well in Jacksonville. And you were talking about that old kind of the old wives' tale, if you will, about West Coast teams, especially going East Coast to travel and play. That's legit. I mean, that's backed up by lots of years of facts, especially in the playoffs. And I think it's probably 2017 when they had that nasty defense, Saxonville, right? Jalen Ramsey and all those guys. Yeah. That's probably the last time that anybody was excited about Jacksonville football this time of year. So it is going to be a fun atmosphere, but I do think that hopefully the Chargers can travel well, whether Mike Williams plays well or not. I'm going to go with Justin Herbert with the value, but also the upside. And on the other side, I expect T-Law and the boys to be putting up points and moving the ball as well. So I think it'll be a shootout, but I'll go with Justin Herbert. It's 7,800 for Justin Herbert on FanDuel. At the running backs, I also needed 2 horses. I have Etienne also. You took Etienne. I took Etienne. I thought about Etienne and Trevor Lawrence, but I didn't want to stack it that way because I just think the Chargers play a better game, and I didn't want to go all in on the Chargers in that mode. So I actually went with Etienne and Herbert instead. Etienne for 7,100. And then you went with Eckler, which of course I would love to have done that. But then again, I'm going all in on the Chargers too. So I got to have one of my Niners, and you can't go wrong with Christian McCaffrey if you can afford him. Easily the most expensive player on the slate, of course, where he should be, 9,800 on FanDuel. So yeah, pretty rough. But I got Herbert, CMC, and Etienne as my top 3 quarterback running backs. I feel really good about that. It's hard to say you're getting a value on CMC or not, but what he can produce and outpace is obvious. And then Etienne and Herbert, I think, have big ceilings as well. Then at the wide receiver position, I agree with you. If I have Herbert especially, I have to have a stack. I don't believe Mike Williams is going to be healthy enough to play. Even if he does, he's probably about 70% at best. So I got to go with Keenan Allen, of course. He's had double-digit targets in 6 consecutive games, 14 or more targets in 3 of those games. He just has to get those touchdowns, which he is getting lately since he's come back. So Keenan Allen for me at wide receiver as well, 8,400. And then I'll have another one of my Niners, Brandon Aiyuk at 6,700. Love Debo, obviously, but as a wide receiver comes, Brandon Aiyuk, in my opinion, is the number 1. I mentioned this in the preseason and people went crazy, but I'm a Niner fan. I listen to stuff differently than non-Niner fans would, like every local fan of your team does. But Debo is a hybrid. They have run him a lot less because of the contract and him complaining about it last year, not wanting to do that. They respected it, and he got hurt, obviously, for a while. But as a pure receiver, Brandon Aiyuk is clearly the number 1 receiver on the team, and it has shown that way with touches and targets. And him and Brock Purdy have looked really great down the last 6 weeks or so and months. So I like Brandon Aiyuk there at 6,700. And then this is kind of my Marvin Jones, if you will, is going to be DeAndre Carter, right, for the Chargers. He's shown some big games. I know you, Derek, and we as a group have talked about him quite a bit on the last, maybe 6 out of the last 8 weeks on Sundays, because Keenan Allen or Gerald Everett or Mike Williams is out every week for the Chargers, and Joshua Palmer and DeAndre Carter have both been able to step up. So I like DeAndre Carter quite a bit. 5,700. He's peanuts on the slate, really. So he's kind of my throw-in guy there, maybe a big play. And again, I feel it's a shootout with that double stack or triple stack, if you will, with Herbert. And then at the tight end position, I also went with Evan Engram. I couldn't afford my boy Kittle at this point, so I went with Engram. I almost went with Gerald Everett, who I think has a nice game against Jacksonville, but then I'm going too heavy on the Chargers, which I don't want to get caught on that. So Evan Ingram's been playing very well for the most part, 5,700 there. And then my flex, this is really a shot in the dark here. This is banking on either, injury or rest or extra work. But DJ Dallas, who is the distant backup to Kenneth Walker against the number 1 defense in the NFL, is going to be my dart throw flex. And this is not a smart play at all, but it's incredibly cheap. And when you get this far down your lineup, most guys that have this price point aren't going to see the field. DJ Dallas is at least going to get 6, 8, 9 touches minimum, could get a goal line carry. He ripped off. I watched the Seahawks game last week, of course, on national TV, and he ended up getting, I think it was like a 36-yard run or so, and it was called back on a holding, but he was basically untouched. I mean, he's explosive, just needs to work. So I'm just hoping for a big play there. And then with the DST, you went with Jacksonville. I'm going to stick in the same game. But because I'm so heavy on Chargers already, I don't want my DST going against that as well. So I'm going to stick with the Chargers. Bosa's back. They're getting healthy in the secondary. They absolutely have been crushing, providing pressure in the last couple of weeks. So the Chargers at 3,900 are going to be my DST. So I'm definitely Los Angeles Chargers heavy. Got a couple 49ers, but I also have some Jaguars as well. I do not have any Seattle Seahawks of note outside of DJ Dallas, who probably won't do much unless Kenneth Walker goes down, and hopefully that does not happen. So to recap quickly, and I'll get your thoughts here. Quarterback, Justin Herbert, 7,800. My running backs are CMC at 9,800 and Travis Etienne at 7,100. My wide receivers, Keenan Allen and DeAndre Carter to triple stack with Justin Herbert. Keenan's 8,400. DeAndre Carter is 5,700. Brandon Aiyuk, not Deebo Samuel, 6,700. And my tight end is Evan Engram, 5,700. DJ Dallas is my shot in the dark there at flex, 4,800. And my DST is the Chargers at 3,900. So, Derek, we have 4 players alike. Herbert, Etienne, Allen, and Engram are the 4 teams that we have the same on the Saturday slot. Any thoughts or any extra players that you thought about throwing in and you didn't on the Saturday slot before we move on to Sunday?
No, not so much. Like I said, this lineup actually really came together pretty nicely for me. We talked through my methodology, and obviously we both like that Chargers Jacksonville game, for different reasons, and we will get into pick the winners, and this one we probably agree on how this is going to go. But no, yeah, that DJ Dallas pick, that's something. The thing is, though, at that cheaper cost, you really don't need a lot from him to get that value. No. So you're spending your money on other players who are going to get the ball. They're going to have a heavy workload. They're going to be part of. If the game script is going to go the way we expect them to, those guys are going to be heavily involved. So I like how you have put that together.
Great. All right. Well, that's the Saturday slot. Again, that's the Seahawks at the Niners and the Chargers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's move on to Sunday. Derek, I'll turn it back over to you here. DraftKings lineup for the Sunday slate. We have 3 games on Sunday. We have the number 2 Bills, hosting the number 7 Miami Dolphins without Tua again. The number 3 Vikings hosting the New York Football Giants, and the number 3 Cincinnati Bengals hosting the Lamarless Ravens for another week as well. So 3 games on Sunday. Derek, what's your lineup so far?
Yeah. So, contrast to what we probably will see on Saturday, or at least in my mind, I see all 3 of these games being potential blowouts for various reasons. And so, I look at that across the slate, and I go back to the Giants Vikings game a few weeks ago, and how back and forth that was, and I with all the weapons there, and of course I've got my Vikings jersey here hanging behind me. I've been riding Vikings all year, and I'm going to do it again on my Sunday slate. So I'll start off at quarterback. I've got Cousins, going Cousins, and he's at 5,900 in DK. So with all those weapons there, he's playing at home. They just played the Giants. He had a big game there. I couldn't pass that up. Although, so I did want to put a mini stack there, and the obvious play is Jefferson, but Jefferson is one of those players where the Giants have to scheme their defense to stop him. They have to, or the game's going to be over at halftime. And so, with that in mind, who does Cousins throw the ball to if he's not throwing it to Jefferson? He throws it to Hawkinson. So Hawkinson's my tight end at 5,100. That was an easy play for me to team those 2 up right away. So I jumped on that. Looking at the running backs, again, I'll stay in that same game. Dalvin Cook at 7,100. He's my most expensive running back that I'm going with here. I like that matchup. I like him catching the ball in the backfield. He's going to get the majority of the rushing attempts, and I expect this to be a higher scoring game, especially on the Vikings side. So Dalvin Cook to me is going to be part of that. For my other running back, I went to the Dolphins-Bills game, and I'm a fan of the Dolphins. I really like what they've done this year, but they're limping into this game, and they're walking into a situation. Of course, it's under their control. There's going to be so much excitement at that game. With surrounding the injury, the previous week, and he'll probably be on the sidelines. I expect you'll see him either on the sidelines or up in the booth, which is a remarkable thing in itself, and it's going to put a lot of life into the Bills. So I really, unfortunately, I don't think the Dolphins are have much of a realistic chance this week, but I do like Jeff Wilson Jr. In this game, especially with Mostert hurt. He's probably not going to play, and Of course, Wilson, he catches the ball in the backfield. They're going to be playing from behind, in my mind. And if they're playing from behind, he's not a running back that you're going to pull off the field when you're in a throwing situation. He's going to be in there. So even though, the game script is probably not going to go in the Dolphins' favor, I expect, even if Mostert was there, which he probably won't be, Wilson Jr., he's going to get the bulk of the work or the bulk of the opportunities. So I like that play. And he's only 5,400 in DK. So I have Cook and Wilson for my two running backs. Moving to wide receivers, how can you not go with Stephon Diggs? I like that matchup there. Again, I think the Bills are going to be high scoring this week. So I'm going there. I couldn't afford Jamar Chase, but I wanted to get a piece of that Bengals because I think they're going to blow the socks off the Ravens too. So I went with T. Higgins at 6,200 to get a piece of that. I do like him better than Tyler Boyd, who's a little bit cheaper, but I like T. Higgins a little better at 6,200. So I've got him there. And then my third wide receiver is Isaiah Hodgins. He's really come on late in the year. His last 5 games, he's had 33 targets and 25 receptions and 4 touchdowns. He hasn't broken the century mark yet in his receiving, but he's really come on lately. It is kind of a crapshoot with the Giants receivers, which one of them is going to be the featured one. But you can throw the ball against the Vikings, and because the way he's come on, I really like Hodgins there. So he's my third wide receiver at 4,100. So that really gives me some salary relief to go with Stephon Diggs. And then for I'll go to defense here. I just said, that game's going to be a blowout. I don't think Baltimore has much of a chance. I saw an interview with a couple of the players earlier in the week, and of course they're saying the right things, but I think they know it too. Frankly, it didn't really seem like there was a lot of passion in their words, and they're really. I think they realize they're walking into something that they're gonna get blown out. So I'm going with the Bengals defense at 3,500. I expect. Of course, we know Lamar Jackson's not going to play, so and we're not sure about Huntley yet. But if it goes beyond Huntley, then I like this one even better at 3,500. So I think the Bengals defense has a chance of really blowing the doors off. But that doesn't leave me with a lot left for flex. So for my flex position, I picked James Cook. So I got Brothers Cook in my slate. This weekend for Sunday. He's only at 4,800, so I can fit that into my salary. He's been coming on. He's getting a larger share of the workload with Singletary. Although they split the snaps, but he's really getting a larger share of the yards and 2 or 3 targets per game, which I like, including a couple red zone targets and a touchdown versus Miami in week 15. So I like that. I like his opportunity, especially if the game script, what we expect anyway at this point with the Bills kind of blowing out the Dolphins, then I expect them to be handing the ball off to Cook more than Singletary. So I'm pretty comfortable with that dart throw there for my flex again with James Cook at 4,800. So that's my Sunday slate. I'll go over it real quick. Kirk Cousins, 5,900. Dalvin Cook at 7,100. Jeff Wilson Jr., 5,400. Isaiah Hodgins at 4,100. Stephon Diggs, 7,700. T. Higgins, 6,200. Hawkinson, 5,100. James Cook in the flex at 4,800. And the Bengals defense at 3,500.
I love it. I have literally 0 disagreements with your whole lineup. I love it all, right? And
especially Jeff Wilson Jr. Right?
Yeah, nice. I mean, dude, well done. I stopped doing it because Matt and Bobby made me feel so sad about myself about always repping my boy Jeff Wilson. I just stopped talking about him, and here we are. So Jeff, go ahead and do your thing. Everyone else can talk about you. I love you. We have 4 players that we agree with on this slate as well. Again, I don't have any disagreements with your lineup, but my lineup seems drastically different, which I find very interesting.
Okay.
So love the Vikings. Obviously, their offense can be absolutely dominant. It can also be a train wreck and unexplainable, frankly. I don't know. We're going to get to pick'ems later, and this game is my hardest game of the whole weekend to pick a winner, not spread, not any of that stuff, just to see who wins the actual game. I'm leaning Giants, actually. I'll explain as we go here. But while I think, yes, the Vikings are playing at home, Vikings could show up and blow the doors off. They're due for one of those games. They haven't done it since that Colts game, but they've been just sluggish the last couple of weeks, which I'm nervous about. And the Giants rested basically their starters last week because that game didn't matter for them, win or lose. So they're coming in a little bit more fresh and hungry after that game that they had played a couple of weeks ago together. So I'm actually going to go the other way here, which could be dangerous, but I'm actually going to go Daniel Jones at 7,400, cheaper anyway. He's the cheapest quarterback on the slate outside of the Ravens situation, which you're not doing for DFS. But Daniel Jones is the next cheapest, 7,400. I also have Brothers Cook. I like that. So I have Dalvin Cook at 7,800. Seems automatic to me. I do think the Vikings will score and do well, and Dalvin is due for a Dalvin game. He hasn't had one in a long time. And as you mentioned, I thought it was a great point. The Giants know they have to shut down Justin Jefferson more than focusing on shutting down Dalvin Cook. And so if they're able to do that, or at least slow him down, I think it's going to be a lot of Dalvin Cook, if not KJ Osborne and Hawkinson and all that. So I do like Dalvin Cook there, 7,800. Brother Cook, James Cook also for the Bills, 5,900. That was a cheap play that I was able to squeeze in. And then at wide receiver, I thought about Jefferson too, but I kind of had a similar mindset with you, and I'm going like kind of Giants heavy, so I didn't want to go there. I got to go Jamar Chase. I think you couldn't afford him with your particular lineup, so you went with T. Higgins, which can't go wrong there. But I can, and I'm going to swap out Stephon Diggs for Jamar Chase. I agree with you. Unfortunately, this Ravens game is probably going to be a bit ugly. However, this is an ugly division. These guys play shootouts and slobber knockers, as we used to call them, right? Like, I don't know, man. I love John Harbaugh. I love what the Ravens can do. They have the best kicker in history, which matters in NFL terms in the playoffs. They do play with heart and defense. I don't know. If they can keep them around, I think they might be okay. But I do think most of the offense comes through Jamar Chase, and his target volume is unnecessary the last 2 months of the season when healthy. I also got your boy Isaiah Hodgins in here as well at 6,400. And then I'm going to double up, and this is strictly I'm banking on one 60-yard pass, and I hope it's a touchdown, and that's Darius Slayton, who all of us loved 2 months ago.
Yeah.
He's kind of disappeared. He's not the number one. He may not even be the number two at this point in the passing game for the Giants. They don't even throw that much anyway, but he does have game-breaking ability, and the reason the Vikings have to come back and have all these heroic last-minute scores and wins is because their defense is terrible, and their pass defense specifically is 31st in the NFL right now. And against wide receivers who can get deep, and Daniel Jones can huck it, it takes in DFS 1 or 2 plays for Darius Slayton. 2 for 93 and a touchdown would far outpace his price point, and that's possible. So I'll take him as my dark horse in this lineup here at 5,800. And then I also have TJ Hawkinson. I totally agree with you. If they can slow down Jefferson, I have Dalvin Cook, but I also have TJ Hawkinson. If Jefferson is pulled out a little bit, they funnel everything else to these two guys. I think that's a good move. You and I both have that Viking stack, if you will, Dalvin Cook and TJ Hawkinson. And then my kind of like expensive flex, because you and I kind of build our receivers different, again, as we just noticed, is Jalen Waddle. So I built my whole roster, and I ended up with 7,300 left and was like, okay, who can I choose from? Boom, Jalen Waddle. Now, he's questionable. He had an ankle injury last week. Didn't look great. I hope he plays, and I hope he's 100%. If he is, I feel super great about this last-minute pickup. If he's not, I'm going to have to audible to somebody else, probably a Tyler Boyd or somebody else, maybe, depending on who I can afford at this point, maybe T. Higgins. But right now it's Jalen Waddle. And then, again, I don't hate the Vikings, but because I have this mindset that the Giants are going to show up and at least play this game with heart, I think they slow him down a little bit. And Kirk Cousins can be sacked. He can throw some interceptions. Dalvin Cook, as great as he is, can fumble the ball. I think the Giants make a couple of plays in this game, and I love my boy Tavon Thibodeau. He's been absolutely on fire in the last handful of games. So 3,700, cheapest DST on the map here in this slate. So I'm going to go Daniel Jones, 7,400, Dalvin Cook, 7,800, brother James Cook, 5,900, Jamar Chase at 8,700, Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton from the Giants, 6,400 and 5,800 respectively. TJ Hawkinson, 7,000, Jalen Waddle at 7,300, and then the Giants DST at 3,700. Again, we have 4 plays again that we're playing the same. Dalvin and James Cook, Isaiah Hodgins, and TJ Hawkinson. Any additional thoughts on the Sunday slate?
No, for me, we were talking about Diggs versus Chase, and that's I hit that first. That's where I was when I got to the wide receivers in my lineups, and I was well, if I go, because I'm nervous about Waddle and Hill. I love both of those guys, but and if Tua was playing, then I would have at least one of them in my lineup. So I was, and I know they're going to throw, but I just couldn't pull the trigger on that. So to me, it came down to, Diggs and Higgins. Do I match those two up, or the Chase and Gabe Davis? That was really where I was at. For those 2 wide receivers spots, the salaries are generally similar for me, and I just thought that Higgins over Gabe Davis to me was the right play. So that's why I ended up with Diggs and Higgins. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Jamar Chase, he could have a monster game. And it's interesting. Neither one of us selected Mixon, which is interesting. I just with Cook and for me Wilson
or Saquon
brother, or Saquon as well, right? He's going to get a lot of work there. But I like your Daniel Jones pick there for quarterback. You almost expect him to rush one in too, which is about, you like to take that as well. So, and I think he threw for over 300 yards last time he was in Minnesota.
Four total touchdowns the last time he was out there. Again, they sat him, they sat Saquon, they sat some of the linemen and defenders as well last week because they just didn't have to win the game according to seeding and all that. They were locked in. So they got a little bit of extra rest. This game is inside, shouldn't have weather issues and things like that. So, I don't know, man. Brian Dable's a special coach, and I think this team is inspired.
With Burrows and Allen and Cousins on that slate, there's probably not going to be a high percentage of ownership there too. So that's a bonus, for you in that lineup. So that's very nice. Nice construction.
Thank you. I totally agree. All right. Well, before we get our quick pick'ems, why don't you give us kind of a full slate, right? You're playing Saturday and Sunday. You got all the dogs in the fight outside of course, the Bucks and Cowboys game on Monday, which that slate is not out yet to our knowledge, at least per this recording. But if you got the other 5 games on the slate, Derek, and you're doing the Saturday, Sunday slate on DraftKings, give us your ideal lineup with all of those teams available.
Yeah, and all these names except for one you've already heard me say before. But yeah, for my full slate, I've got Kirk Cousins starting. He's 5,900 in the full slate. Etienne and Dalvin Cook are my 2 running backs. Etienne's at 6,300 and Dalvin Cook's at 7,000 for the full slate. Of course, we talked before, Keenan Allen. Got to have Keenan Allen in that lineup. I've got Isaiah Hodgins in there, and I'll skip my wide receiver 3 for a minute and jump down tight end Hawkinson. We both had Hawkinson and understand why. We both had James Cook, so I have James Cook as well as my flex in the full slate, and then Cincinnati defense for the reasons I said before. I just see Baltimore, rolling over. And I hate to say it for them, but I think they are. I think Cincinnati is just going to dominate the Baltimore offense. So going back to wide receiver 3, I had enough money left for DK Metcalf against the Niners. So neither one of us had him, in our Saturday slate, but wide receivers, especially wideouts, there are points available against that San Francisco defense. Yep. And Geno's faced them already. That's not, this is what their third matchup of the year. So
Yep,
these teams know each other. They know what they're going to do. And, I think, Metcalf has I like both Metcalf and, both of the Seattle wide receivers, but I really just think Metcalf has an opportunity to take advantage of the matchup there and perhaps get a little, maybe a longer touchdown or maybe two. So he's my wide receiver 3.
I like it. And if you're going shots in the dark, as far as like, primetime wide receivers that are cheap, Tyler Lockett should also be considered as well. Cause you're right. The Niners don't have many, slits in the armor, if you will, but if you do, it's a not 100% secondary. And if you can get loose and they blow a coverage, basically the touchdowns on the 49ers are either 16 play drives where they just get burnt out and they give up a score eventually, or they just get toasted for 70 yards. They destroyed the Dolphins. And at the very end of the game, Trent Sherfield had like an 80-yard slant, and then Tyreek had one too, right? And the game was already over, but they just got dusted. So those type of plays can make or break DFS weekends. I like that shot in the dark.
Yep.
All right, Derek. Well, let's get into this year. We'll clock out in just 1 minute, but before we do, let's get our pick'ems for Wildcard Weekend. Of course, again, we have 6 games on the slate. We will pick the Monday night game in this. We just don't have a DFS slate and lineup to discuss currently. But let's start here with we'll just kind of go in order of how those games are being played. Let's go with the 7 Seahawks facing the number 2 49ers. I'll let you go first with all these.
Yeah, it's hard. There's an old saying, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season, and that's what the Niners are going to be looking to do, to beat the Seahawks for the 3rd time. I think this is a close game. I think it's going to be a good game as well, and it's going to be close, but I'm going to pick the 49ers, and they just have more weapons, frankly, and I don't expect Seattle to have much of a running game against the 49er defense, so I think that's going to be the difference. CMC, and maybe a little bit Debo in there, and Elijah Mitchell, he's healthy, so I expect healthy-ish, I guess, but I expect the Niners to be able to squeak this one out. But I think it's going to be closer than a 3-7 matchup, or a 2-7 matchup should be.
Yeah, I agree. And, for the last handful of years, majority of the time, the Niners and Seahawks also meet in the playoffs. Of course, they're in the same division. So they do play twice a year plus the playoff. So we play, we 49ers play the Seahawks 3 times a year pretty often. Pete Carroll knows this team very well, but Shanahan also knows the Seahawks very well. And I'm with you. I just don't think they can hang with the 49ers. I don't care if the Niners win the game 3-2 or if they blow them out. They just got to get that dub. I'm going to go with my 49ers. Next up on the Saturday slate here, we got the Chargers traveling all the way across the country, about as far as you can go from stadium to stadium, LA to Jacksonville, coast to coast, quite literally. We got the Chargers heading to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Who you got?
Yeah, the Jaguars are a great story, especially after the misery that they came through last season. To make the playoffs this year and have a home game playoff. It's a great story, but they're a year away at least from seriously contending. I like the Chargers. I think they're built for a playoff game like this. It may not always look great, but I see them, and they, again, it's going to go through Herbert, Eckler, and Allen. That it's going to go through them. And, they were all 3 of those names were throughout our DFS lineups for good reason. So I do like the Chargers winning in Jacksonville, maybe by a touchdown at the most.
Yep, I like it. And if you go matchup to matchup, I think Herbert and Herbert and Lawrence are kind of a wash, maybe head to head. That's fine. Eckler gets a nudge at running back. Allen gets a nudge at wide receiver. Right, you can kind of have a wash at tight end, but defensively, I think the Chargers would have the edge there. The one thing that we see with upsets, and we're like, how did that team beat this team and upset them in the playoffs? A lot of times it comes down to coaching and roster experience. Now, both these teams are super young and raw, and they don't have experience as teams in the playoffs, but you do have, Doug Peterson, who obviously made that run with the Philadelphia Eagles a few years ago, and that is a huge advantage when you get into the playoffs. I'm going to take the Chargers also, But if the Jacksonville Jaguars show up right away, the Chargers are outside what they're not used to and on the road on the East Coast time slot. They could get, maybe punched in the mouth early. Hope it doesn't happen for my boy Herbert, but Jacksonville could show up. However, I will also go with the Chargers. Let's go to the Sunday slate here. We'll start with the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I don't see this. Unfortunately, I don't see this game being close. There's just so many reasons why Buffalo's going to come out swinging right from the gate, just like last week. With that kick return for the touchdown. I don't necessarily see that, but they're going to hit. You talk about punching in the mouth. They're going to hit the Dolphins hard, and I expect 24. They're going to win by 24 points. I really think this is going to be a blowout. Maybe 31 to or 34 to 10 or something. I could see a score like that, frankly.
I totally agree with you. I do think the Buffalo Bills win. And I think they win big, and it's going to be obviously an incredibly emotional game for many reasons, obviously. And just football talking, I mean, the Bills are forever going to have that 0-4 Super Bowl monkey on their back. They got close a couple years ago with the coin flip against the Chiefs and whatever. The rest is history. But Bills have made a couple of runs the last couple of years. We'll see how they can swing it on Sunday. All right, let's go with the Vikings and the Giants. We've talked about this game quite a bit here. Minnesota, again, they can run teams out of the stadium. They can also get kind of caught off guard. And the Giants are just kind of – they're sneak attackers, I think. You know what I mean? Like, nice hardcore coach and team playing with a lot of grit. So who do you got, Vikings or the Giants?
Yeah, I think we're going to disagree on this one, but if you just match up the skill positions, in most cases, the Vikings are going to be dominant. So it's the onus is going to fall on the Giants defense to slow them down, and we don't really put a lot of faith in the Vikings to slow much of any offense down, but the Giants don't quite have the skilled position players like the Vikings do. So if the Giants can keep it close, then I think they have a chance. But I don't think they will. I think the Vikings are going to win, maybe by 10.
Okay, don't disagree with anything you said. On paper, apples to apples, the Vikings outside of Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, I think that's maybe a wash, depending on how you talk about it. Other than that, Vikings skill set all the way down. I just have a gut feeling, dude. There's always an upset or two in weekends in the wild card. This one for me just feels off. Obviously with DFS, I kind of have sold into this Giants narrative here, but I'm going to roll with Bob on this one. Love the Vikings. I'm a big fan of a lot of those players, but in this game, I just for some reason have a gut feeling here. So I'm actually going to go with the Giants. First upset that we'll talk about here with our pick'ems. All right, let's move down to Cincinnati and Baltimore. You and I have talked about this one quite a bit too. You made it very clear that Baltimore is behind the 8 ball at minimum.
Yeah, this game to me is over by halftime. Frankly, I think the Bengals have a chip on their shoulder. They want to get back to the Super Bowl, to take that final step. So they got some unfinished business to do. The Ravens come in, a shell of really what they could be. I don't see this close. I think it's going to be a steamroll.
I agree. Unfortunately, I really like the Vikings. My lady's Vikings, Ravens, same colors. My bad. My lady's a big Ravens fan. I like the Ravens a lot, and they're a fun team to watch in the playoffs. But of course, with Lamar Jackson, I agree. Without him, and probably even Todd Huntley, I think it's just going to be, or Tyler Huntley, I think it's going to be ugly quick. So I agree.
I'll tell you before we move on. I'm in just kind of take a side real quick. I'm in a playoff competition where you pick one player from each team to, it goes for the whole playoffs. So including the Chiefs and the Eagles. So you pick one player, you set your lineup, and then that's your lineup for the whole.
So it's like best playoffs. Ball for 4 weeks or something.
Exactly. 3 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 4 receivers, a kicker, and a defense.
Love it.
So when it came to the came to the Ravens, I'm thinking, well, who do I take from
Tucker?
the Ravens? Justin Tucker.
Nice. Yeah, dude.
Which offensive player do you take from the Ravens? Figuring what they're going to get one game out of them. Who do you take? The kicker.
I love it. Yeah,
Justin
I mean,
Tucker.
if you're going to take a kicker, I mean, I quizzed Bob on Sunday a couple of weeks ago. Justin Tucker's actually had 0 number 1 finishes on the season. But if I had any kicker in this day and age, maybe all time, to just line up and win me a game in any condition, I'm definitely picking Tucker. So that would be the guy too. I agree there. All right, let's go with the final game on the slate. Again, we did not talk DFS here, but we will do a pick'em. That is the Dallas Football Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. So Tampa gets the host, which is an absolute joke. I'm going to save my rant about how the playoff seedings actually happen. Nonetheless, the rules are that the division winners get to host a game. And I always harken back to Beast Quake many, many years ago. For those of you that have been watching football over a decade, the Seattle Seahawks were 7-9. Mm-hmm. That's right, folks. 7-9, less than 500. 7-9, won the division, which was an absolute joke because my Niners were worse than that. They hosted the 11-5 Saints with Drew Brees, and they were absolutely on fire that season. They hosted them in Seattle. Marshawn Lynch went nuts. Beastquake, the rest is history. Seahawks got the upset. They ended up moving on. Anything can happen, especially at home. And then you have an outdoor team going to Tampa. You have the Cowboys, who are not an outdoor squad, going to Tampa. Dak's been struggling. Defense has been struggling. Brady with any weapons in the playoffs. Obviously, he's got the resume there. So, do you think the Cowboys can upset Brady for the first time in their career because he's undefeated against the Cowboys in his career, or do you think Brady's got another trick up his sleeve?
Yeah, this one's tough. I could see this going. I could go either way. With this one because, like you said, both teams they've got skilled players, they've got weapons. They've shown flashes of being really good, and they've shown flashes of being, a dumpster fire, frankly. So this one's really tough. I'm going to lean the Bucs here. Being at home, probably Tom Brady's last run. I think he probably retires after this. Was his first losing season he's in his career. He doesn't look the same to me, but Mike Evans has finally broken out of his shell. He's back. Godwin's, he's got weapons. Both the running backs are going to get their run. I like a lot of the Cowboy players, but I just don't have any faith in them. And frankly, I've never been a fan of the Cowboy head coach. I just don't think he can win the big game, or he manages the game well enough. And if as long as something strange happens, like you get some special teams or defensive scores, Brady throws a pick six, because he's not going to chase anybody down if he throws a pick. So as long as you don't see something like that early on and you get that big lead, I think the Bucs are going to control the game, and I would give them the win. But that was tough, and it's probably going to be as far as they go. Frankly, if they win this game, it's probably as far as they go. But I'll give them the win this week.
I think the Cowboys come out early, and just talent wins over early, and maybe it's even 14-0, 14-3, something like that. But Brady chips away, the Bucs chip away, coaching versus coaching, Brady versus everybody else. I think this is like a final drive kind of a game, honestly. Field goal, touchdown, whatever. I think it's going to be ugly, low scoring, but like 21-20, 21-18, something like that. 24-21. I think the Bucs get it done as well. So we only have one upset. That is my pick here this week, which makes sense because a lot of the favors are big favors on purpose in the wild card round there. So for seedings, the only upset we have is the Giants over the Vikings, which I'm picking. Otherwise, we have all of the same picks. 49ers over the Seahawks, the Chargers over the Jaguars. We have the Buffalo Bills over the Miami Dolphins. I've got the Giants over the Vikings. Derek has the Vikings over the Giants. We both have the Bengals over the Ravens and the Bucs over the Dallas Cowboys. Long one tonight, folks. Thank you for sticking with us. I appreciate it so much. We'll be back with you next week. We are not doing Sunday shows anymore for the season, but we will be with you next year, of course, for the Sunday live shows. However, you can catch all of the episodes right here on the Razzball Fantasy Football YouTube show. Of course, articles are still coming out, multiple articles per week, free on razzball.com. Go check those out, of course. You can follow everybody and Razzball on Twitter at Razzball, and you can follow Derek, of course, and myself online, Bob, Matt, the rest of the crew. We are still with you through the rest of the season. And of course, we're going to have a ton of off-season content. We have Dynasty coming out already. We're going to have draft pre-coverage, coverage, and rookies, all of that coming out after the fact as well. Season recaps, what we did well, what we didn't do well, how we can learn from it. Those are some of my favorite episodes to get prepared for the next season. ADP check-ins for drafts and things like that as well. So we appreciate hanging out with the Razzball team. Make sure to download the podcast at the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast as well. Leave a rate and review. And, of course, subscribe right here to the YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody. Enjoy the playoffs this week. And we will catch you next week on the Razzball Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Enjoy your football, everybody. Have a wonderful,
good luck, everybody,
for the rest of your week. Take care.